Hi guys, thank you for being here. It's a pleasure for me. I just came from Brazil today morning, so a little bit of jet lag in this process, but it's amazing to be here with you guys and having this chat. I prepared some questions. The objective is to give good tips and to give good insights in terms of assessing the increase of utilization and productivity of mining operations. So the first question will be about system, process, and training. So I would like to ask to Brett and Dave if you can give us some insights about what you have actually implemented in your operation, or you see that implemented in some operation that you participate that really works in terms of system, process, training, methodologies that really improve the equipment utilization and productivity, and how you measure those results during those implementations.
Yeah, thanks, Eder. It's a pleasure to be here, and a great question as well. It's 3 months ago, PLS didn't even have a fleet management system, right? So, benchmarking or trying to actually get a baseline for our operation was very difficult. We were very manually based, and then that opens up interpretation right across the business. So, everything was open to that, and we just couldn't manage what we couldn't measure. So, a lot of the times, we had to kind of go big on what we did, and here's what we did in a few key steps. So we standardised the fleet, and basically, so we didn't have to measure each of the different types of equipment, right? We created a standardised time usage model. Sounds really, really boring, but when you get into a discussion about 4 or 5 different mine engineers' view on what utilisation is, it soon becomes apparent that you actually need to write it down and get it pretty clear amongst other people. And then we implemented the fleet management system and did that. So we didn't rush into benchmarking after that. We really took it easy. We established good roles and routines, and we resisted the urge to tweak and change things along the way. Whilst the info was and the data was still settling. So, it was paramount that we did that. The real breakthrough wasn't the technology itself, it was actually having the reliable data to create the decisions on. That's where we actually had the real win for PLS.
Perfect, thank you. If you can give us some tips as well, please.
Sure. So hi everybody, and it's great to be here. My name is Dave Thambiratnam. I'm the CEO of Veridapt. We are in the fuel management business, and we help our customers manage and monitor their inventories of fuel across their mining fleets. And just by virtue of touching fuel, which is one of the largest operating costs for most of our customers, we are involved in a lot of process optimization and improvement projects that they do. And then the key thing, like Brett just said, is fundamentally having a good benchmark to start with. So typically you've got a problem and you want to address it, but often the current state is not well defined or well cleared because the data's not there, so you've got some loose data. So getting a really strong baseline has been really critical to at least set where it's going to. Then the other important thing when implementing these things is having a really strong change team. And what we have seen, looking at the customers that implement these changes, who are, for example, trying to bring about fuel savings or trying to bring around service truck utilization productivity up, what they have to do is kind of run the teams and plan the work, because these things don't happen in a microsecond. They take a long time to execute and manage. There are a lot of variables. And so setting up the team really strongly to execute on that critical. But the thing that we've seen fall over and again is, generally speaking, you then have to execute, and the data's got to be really solid. And data tends to fall apart when you're trying to do these improvement activities, because you generally are trying to measure something and see if it's improved over time. And if you don't have a good way to measure it, so for example, in our space where we're looking at fuel productivity or fuel cost optimizations, you need to have understanding of where your fuel costs are going, where they're being allocated to. So you need really, really solid data. So having robust infrastructure, systems, processes, and tools to manage that become really important. So you can execute your project And unfortunately, what we do find is that the implementations often stall because of the time it takes to implement these changes. And so you might go through 2 or 3 or 4 years, and then sometimes they take a long time to execute. And then in that time, you've had a change of management, you've had a change of structure. And so, you lose that patience. So that fourth step is really, it's a marathon, it's not a sprint. You have to kind of keep a team together, keep it going, and then come back to your baseline. So it's just a whole bunch of things. It's really complicated, which is why, we have a lot of change management consultants and people that help us do these things because it's hard.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. And the next question, Billie, about change management. If you can share with us about our experience, because it's a challenge, and how Ravenswood Gold and you in your experience pass through those challenges of change management in terms of lift the utilization and productivity of the mining operation.
Thank you for that, Eder. Yes, so the key point with our change management aspects is always understanding the impact of what you're doing with these implementations of technologies to the people involved, making sure that you socialise what is going to happen and how it's going to impact people's roles early on in the place, and ensuring that you don't use this technology initially as that big stick to measure people. Benchmarking is important, but that's something that comes as your data flows through, and you really need to align your people so that you change your processes to support, which is what Brett was talking about earlier. Change your processes to support this technology, and then you can use your data to actually measure what is happening within your fleet. And often it's what you find that you'll take information and data out of your fleet management system, and it will actually tell you something else. It'll not actually be your fleet management and your utilisation of your fleet that's the issue. It could well be your mine design and your mine planning, so how you're scheduling. So it's really important that in that change management aspect you consider the people element, as well as ensuring that you get that technical support from your vendor as you implement, because things will change and there'll be a chance, more than likely than not, people will want to increase the scope, so managing that scope change, but also understanding that you need that sustained support from your vendor to be able to implement this successfully.
Thank you. Thank you, Steve. I don't know if you want to contribute in some point. Please feel free, my friend.
Yeah, thanks, Eder. It's great to be here. I think, when it comes down to change management, Castrol has a unique opportunity to sit on the sidelines. We're often dealing with our mining customers and with lots of OEMs to work through a lot of different management of changes. And I think some of the keys that we've been able to develop over a long period of time is just understanding what the activities are that everybody needs to do to add towards that change management, and setting out clear goals and expectations on how that's going to roll, who are the project leads, what are the activities, making sure that there's clear guidelines to that. So change management at all sites on any type of change management is always very difficult. But more importantly, I think it's the toughest thing that we find is having the right people at the site to do the job. A lot of our mining operators are running, obviously, a lot tighter these days. There's less people on site to do the roles. And so anytime you have to change something, it comes at quite a great cost to the people. So taking them on the journey and making sure that they understand where you're going, why you're going there, what you're hoping to achieve out the other side is really, really important.
Yeah, great. Thank you. So the next question, I would like to invite Rob to answer. And Rob have a lot of experience in terms of benchmark. So this question, Rob, about your expertise in this environment, what do you believe that differentiate an operation that have high performance than an operation that have a low performance in terms of utilization and productivity?
We do a lot of benchmarking around HME equipment, and I think often we would find a site that focuses only on one KPI, and so there might be a particular focus on availability or utilisation. And I think that KPI can always be achieved through a trade-off of sacrificing some of the other KPIs that are generating a true output. And so I think what we would see is that often there are single miners or mine operators that only own a single mine, and they are overweight then in our highest performing sites, and it's often because all they care about is the complete operational efficiency at the end of the day, and it's that combination of both utilisation, availability, cycle time, payload, pass match, queue time, all of them adding up to the overall effectiveness of the fleet. I think what we'd see is that normally it's when sites are being held to common metrics across a portfolio that only focus on utilisation or only focus on engine hours, that then leads to a lower overall performance.
Yeah, perfect. Like about choosing the right tech, because we know that there are a lot of vendors, a lot of techs outside there, and how to differentiate them. What are the differentials of the vendors, the techs that you believe that's important to decide the best tech to apply, the best vendor to contract to improve efficiency in the mining operation? So Dave and Billie, if you can start answering, then anyone, if you want to, feel free to contribute.
So there are a lot of vendors out there. Your tech choices really come down to what it is you're looking for. Honestly, when it comes to fleet management systems, many people can provide many things. From a operator perspective, what's important clearly for us is access to that data and that working relationship with the vendor. So you need to be able to work with the vendor to utilise that product to the best of your ability, to stretch the vendor as well, to challenge them on how their product operates and works, but also ensuring that you can use that data so you can play that back and make those informed decisions in your business.
Great, thank you.
So I'm a vendor, so I'm going to say if the company starts with a V, kidding. But I think some of the things that we see when we go up for RFPs and tenders, and I think most of our customers have got formal procurement processes to handle this, right? And the challenge is often the metrics, a bit like what you just said, are focused on one aspect of things, for example, price or functionality or time to implement. And they don't necessarily look at the longer-term operational costs or the total cost of ownership or the ongoing operational effectiveness or maintenance or support requirements to implement such a system. So I think having a complete holistic set of parameters when you're looking at how you buy these is not something we see often. So we often find ourselves, as a vendor, struggling with, okay, how do we position ourselves against a much cheaper solution that maybe isn't as robust? Or how do you position a complete holistic offering versus something that hits a price point? Because price is the only variable. And so it is quite complicated, I think, for both our customers. I think they respond to the constraints of the time and the management priorities of the time. So if cost savings are important or if time is important, then that comes sometimes overweigh other problems that they pay for later. So I think it's quite challenging as a result.
I think the key to success in that area is making sure you do your research and understand what it is you're looking to implement and to purchase. So scoping out what your stakeholders need. That is where a lot of these sorts of projects will fall over and you won't get what you need. And you're 100% correct. Always considering that total cost of ownership is incredibly important. Otherwise, you get shiny new things that when management changes will just be shiny new things that aren't giving you the value that they can or could.
Great, thank you. I don't know if Steve, Brad, Rob want to contribute. Feel free.
Yeah, I suppose just looking on the outside, I think it's really important in terms of technology, to what Billie said around what you're trying to achieve. We have recently had a situation where we were, one of 4 involved in a difficult conversation. You had the mining operator who owned the equipment, you had the OEM who supplied the equipment, you had the contractor who was running the equipment, and you had us as the lubricant partner. And of course, the owner of the equipment was blaming the contractor for the failures that they were seeing in their steering pins. You had the mining contractor blaming the OEM for the supply of the equipment and the way it was supplied, and you had the OEM blaming the lubricant partner for the grease and what they'd sort of supplied. So, this went around in circles for a couple of months, and eventually we have a great partnership with a technology company called GreaseBoss, which identify, and I think Tim actually spoke earlier today in the session here, identifies the volume and frequency of grease that's being delivered. So, we took it upon our shoulders to provide that equipment, to verify that we weren't getting the right volume and frequency of grease. And what that actually highlighted for the OEM was that they'd set the equipment up exactly within the standard that came from the factory. But what we actually determined over a period of time was that the number of 90-degree bends and the way that the lube system was actually set up, it just wasn't from the factory allowing for the amount of flow of grease that needed to happen. So it wasn't actually anybody's fault, but it was getting to the root cause of that. So I think to Billie's point, understanding what your problem is and what you're looking for is really, really important. And then identify partners, not just in technology providers, but also in your other vendors that can help support that conversation for you and get to the right outcome.
Yeah, thank you. So the next question, Brett, I would like to ask for you. What advice would you do for a junior miner that wants to achieve the benchmark in terms of productivity and utilization?
Yeah, I think the biggest mistake often made in benchmarking or creating a baseline is doing it when the operation is unstable. So doing it when you've got a mismatch of equipment, you might be running 70-ton dump trucks and 150-ton dump trucks. You've got different diggers, and you're basically trying to get to a mature mining level well before you can get there. So I think the biggest challenge is just don't compare yourself to the mature operation, stabilise your operation, and then set the baseline so that you can actually start to benchmark and look for the improvements.
Great, thank you. Please, if anyone wants to contribute in this question, feel free.
I'd just add that I think junior miners are overrepresented in some of the best operations in the world. And so I think there's often a perception that a larger operation is by definition more efficient, but in fact the opposite can be true, is that if you keep it simple and get the interface between dispatch, maintenance and operations clear, is that that's where some of the highest performance comes from globally.
Great. So Rob, about the future of the performance, like given the current performance in the operations and what you have seen in terms of fleet, what are the biggest challenge that you believe for the future of the performance in the operations of Australia?
I think we've seen a really big shift in the last 15 years of what good performance looks like. And so just to use utilisation as a metric, good performance 15 years ago was often seen as being 44 or 4,500 hours a year, and now that really has to be 55 or 5,600 hours a year to be considered good, and there's lots of operations doing more than 6,000 hours a year. I think what that's done though is that's accelerating the ageing of Australia's fleet, and there was an enormous influx of fleet in 2011 and 2012. And so because of that high utilisation, we've now hit what's been considered a standard replacement point for trucks for decades. And I think that ageing fleet and being able to sustain a high level of utilisation and operations even when assets go past 80 or 100,000 hours is the next challenge that's coming up. I think there's a few constraints to being able to replace that fleet like we normally would. One is that prices don't always sustain the capital that's required to renew the fleet, but also a lot of people are trying to move to a decarbonised fleet, and yet the technology is not ready off the shelf yet. And so people are wanting to defer and wait until that technology becomes sort of to be a fast follower, but that's going to require running fleet far longer than we have in the past. So I would sort of call that out as being one of the more difficult challenges for our industry over the next sort of 10 years, is to do that transition late.
Great, perfect. So, Brett, what do you understand in terms of the main pillars to access this high performance in the operations? If you can describe like 3 of them, and also if guys you want to contribute in this, because I believe that's really important. Define how to start, what the first, second, and third one in those terms.
Yeah, I think the post-implementation of our fleet management system and starting to see some genuine improvements since we've basically baselined and now have a good stable operating platform has been a really good place. And I guess the three pillars emerged that we kind of see as non-negotiable was I think it is to standardise your fleet. Don't start the benchmarking process halfway through when you're buying in the new gear or you're transitioning to different gear, because you'll just start chasing pockets of data. I think, as Billie and Stephen both talked about earlier, robust change management. It's critical, and the way I look at it as well is it's people before the technology. So get your people on board before you get your technology. And then the other one is actually when you get the data and it's telling you what to do, then go and action it. If you have data without action, really all you've got is very expensive record keeping, and that's not where we're at, right? The fleet management systems go second by second data on every piece of equipment. If utilisation drops in particular areas, you can hone in on it in real time. You don't actually have to wait till the end of the month to get the report and then work out what went wrong. So I think those three things, to keep those three things clear in mind, and a little bit of what everyone else has been talking about is know the problem that you're trying to solve before you embark on implementing the technology.
Yeah, great, thank you. David, if you can complete.
It's hard. That's a very good answer. I'm struggling to think how can I add to it, but I think if you could contemplate how complex these things are, the implementation is really important. And I think, like Brett just said, having the people-centric view to how you implement the change and making sure that you bring them on that journey is really, really important. A lot of times we see technology being rolled in through our customers, and it's our tech plus some of our other partners' techs being thrown in. And what we see is you put all the money into the implementation, but you didn't put it into the training or the onboarding or the ongoing support, and then you kind of have that failure. And then what are you measuring really? Because you introduced something new, you couldn't implement it properly, it didn't work correctly. Where do you find the root cause of the problem? You fix it, go back, start again, and so it's quite difficult. So I think Brett said really well. I think that one is that people-centricity around that change, and the second is really coming back to a real clear idea of what you're measuring and your point of stability. You see the junior miners or the smaller companies that are trying to compare themselves against big people, look at industry benchmarks, and it doesn't make sense. Because actually, why would you want to be as slow as that? And so it's actually kind of, you don't have anything but to benchmark against yourself. And so it's coming up to a place of, have you got the right people, have you got the right tools, have you invested appropriately to what you have and your capital allows, and then benchmark that and then improve from there.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. And like to the final of our panel, I would like if you could give some insights or tips for who are here in terms of how to increase the productivity and utilization. There are a lot of things going on, so you have the machines, you have the system, you have the training, you have the process. So if you go to system, you have full system, fleet management, dispatch system, you have contractor management. So there are a lot of things to do in this space, and you have to run the mine. You have to bring the production and to keep the mining planning. So in this lot of things that there is in this space, what could you give in terms of tips, of insights of how to start, how to bring the best productivity and the best efficiency for the mining industry? Because in the end of the day, the objective is to do more with less resource, less cost, less people, to be more productive and more competitive in this space. And it's a big challenge. So if you can give some practical tips for the audience.
Well, I think the first place is to understand what your processes are. You can't change everything at once, because if you do that, you're actually not going to know what's working. And the key point is really it's people, processes, and the technology to support those people and processes. Without that, unfortunately, you won't be successful.
I think I'd add to that is that I think in mining, you can always deliver this shift at the expense of the next shift, and you can always deliver today at the expense of tomorrow. You can always make this year's budget at the expense of next year's budget. I think alongside any implementation of technology or benchmarking or performance improvement. There's really a cultural shift of how do you set up the next shift for success and how do you set up the next month for success. I think all the information that's being gathered can be used for that, but that requires a sort of a cultural agreement between production superintendents and maintenance and the dispatcher in particular.
That's a really key element of it, I think, is that a site pulling together from the execution piece of pulling the ore out of the ground to the actual milling and processing of that as well.
I think I'd just add that as a vendor, similar to my colleague here from Veridapt, lean on your vendor partners. Lots of vendor partners out there are very aware of the challenges of the industry. We come along to a lot of industry events. We talk to a lot of people across your organisations, and we're very focused on how we can actually help support you in what you're trying to achieve. And it's quite natural for organisations, our organisation does the same, to spend a lot of time looking inwards at what you can do internally to try and drive asset utilisation and production uplift. But you've got a whole world of vendors out there that are trying to help support you in doing that as well. So, I suppose I just encourage everybody to lean on those vendors where they can add that benefit to you and see what they can bring, because there's lots of collaboration and innovation that's happening in your vendor space that can actually overcome a lot of problems that you're seeing in your operations every day.
Obviously, I agree with him. But I think just to add to that, sometimes as a vendor you have this interesting perspective because you can see all your customers' operations and all their data. We can see, you pick a truck, I can tell you what its refilling profile looks like across every one of our customers. Probably 50% of diesel in Australian mining goes through our platform. That's a lot of data, and there probably are benefits from that can be garnished into looking at asset efficiency, utilisation, productivity standards. So I think if you think of efficiencies, your two largest costs are typically going to be people and fuel. We can probably talk to the fuel item. I think there's lots there. The first step, though, is do you actually know where it's all going? Can you account for it? If you can't account for your fuel expenditure, if you can't account for where it's going, if you can't track where the assets are being spent and what's left, if you don't have that basic visibility, how can you even know where to start from? So usually most customers have implemented fleet management and fuel management systems, but often haven't got the data in a place where they can actually look at it and make decisions off it. So I think getting that data, making a solid baseline, and then absolutely working with the vendors creatively, there's a lot that can be done.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of key points there. I think, Eder, you touched on it. There's so many things that we look at from a mining operation that we can go after, and I think the real key is actually working out what it is you want to do, what problem it is you're trying to solve. Because sometimes we try to solve everything yesterday, and that creates quite a bit of confusion, in particular with our people, and then that comes back to that change management piece. The other aspect, I think, is what Rob was talking about is, a lot of the times we want to actually buy the best equipment, we want to buy the sustainable equipment, but the vendors or the OEMs don't have it for us. So we have to make a second sort of choice. So a lot of the times, people are inquisitive of why certain companies go certain ways. Well, we don't have a great deal of options, even in the mining industry with equipment choice or fitting some of the technology to the choices that we have to make. So that's a bit of an issue as well. So there's quite a bit in it, but I think the main tips are know what you're trying to do, and then work with your vendors, and then if you have to make the second choice, then it's the choice you've made, so you're going to have to stick with it, and you're going to have to be at the forefront of it.
Perfect. So, guys, thanks for your time. Thanks for the contribution, and I hope that you like the panel. It was a pleasure to be here, and that's it. Thank you.